In the dusty, sun-baked ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, buried beneath millennia of sand and silence, lies a creation story so radical that it makes the book of Genesis look like a simplified summary. While Western civilization has been raised on the idea that humanity was formed from dust by a singular, omnipotent God in a garden called Eden, the clay tablets of Sumer, the world's first known civilization, tell a far more complex and unsettling tale. Discovered in the 19th century and translated over decades by scholars who often couldn't believe what they were reading, these cuneiform texts describe the origins of humanity not as a divine miracle, but as a desperate industrial solution to a labor dispute. The central characters are not vague spiritual entities, but the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, a pantheon of powerful, physical beings who descended to our planet long before the dawn of history. According to the texts, particularly the Atrahasis epic and the myth of Enki and Ninmah, the Anunnaki did not come here to be worshipped, they came to work. Specifically, the lower-tier gods, known as the Igigi, were burdened with the back-breaking task of dredging canals, clearing riverbeds, and, most controversially, mining the earth. For 2,500 years, or perhaps periods, the Igigi toiled in misery, digging into the crust of the planet until they could take it no more. In a dramatic act of rebellion that reads like a modern union strike, they downed their tools, surrounded the palace of the chief god Enlil, and set their baskets on fire, demanding relief from their endless drudgery. This prehistoric mutiny set the stage for the single most consequential decision in the history of our planet, the creation of a primitive worker, a biological machine capable of taking over the load. The Sumerian texts do not shy away from the nature of this creation. They call him Lulu Amalu, the mixed one, or the primitive worker. This was not Adam, the beloved child of God. This was Adamu, the slave, engineered for a specific purpose in a time of crisis. This narrative forces us to confront a possibility that is both terrifying and fascinating, that the image of God we were created in was actually the genetic template of an exhausted, desperate crew of extraterrestrial miners who simply wanted someone else to do their digging. The task fell to Enki, the brilliant scientist and god of wisdom, and his half-sister Ninmah, also known as Ninhursag, the chief medical officer of the Anunnaki. Unlike the biblical account where God simply breathes life into dust, the Sumerian version involves a complex biological procedure known as the mixing of the clay. Enki proposes a radical solution to the Igigi strike. They will create a hybrid being by fusing the clay of the Abzu, the deep earth, or perhaps a specific location in Africa, with the blood of a god. A deity named Geshtui, or sometimes Weila, is sacrificed, his blood and intelligence collected and mixed with the earthly clay. This clay is not merely mud. Alternative theorists like Zacharias Sitchin argue it represents the genetic material or DNA of an existing hominid species, Homo Erectus, which was already present on Earth but lacked the intelligence to follow complex orders. The blood of the god provided the necessary upgrade, the divine spark of consciousness, language, and tool use. The texts describe a trial-and-error process that is shockingly devoid of divine perfection. Enki and Ninmah produced several failed prototypes, beings with trembling hands, blindness, or paralyzed limbs, before finally achieving the perfect specimen. This creature, the Adamu, is described as being bound to the mold of the gods, a phrase that suggests a literal cloning or splicing process. This is the missing link theory written in cuneiform. Humanity is neither fully ape nor fully god, but a splice of both, created in a sterile, clean room by beings who wash their hands like surgeons before touching the clay. It implies that our evolutionary leap was not natural selection, but artificial selection, a deliberate genetic modification designed to produce a creature smart enough to use a shovel, but submissive enough to obey a master. This question lies at the heart of the Anunnaki gold theory, popularized by Zacharias Sitchin and embraced by ancient astronaut theorists as the missing motive for human existence. Sitchin's interpretation of the texts, which mainstream Assyriologists vehemently reject as mistranslation, posits that the Anunnaki did not come to Earth for exploration or conquest, but for survival. According to this theory, their home planet, Nibiru, was facing a catastrophic atmospheric collapse, its protective shield eroding in the harsh vacuum of space. The only substance capable of repairing this damage was gold, specifically, monatomic gold particles suspended in the atmosphere to reflect radiation and retain heat. This turns the entire history of Earth into a resource extraction mission. The Anunnaki arrived, established their base in the Abzu, which Sitchin identifies as Southeast Africa, coincidentally the site of the oldest known gold mines in the world, and began the arduous process of extraction. The creation of man was simply a logistical necessity to scale up production. This hypothesis offers a chilling explanation for humanity's eternal, irrational obsession with gold. Why has every major civilization, from the Incas to the Egyptians to the Sumerians, valued this soft, useless metal above life itself? Why was gold the flesh of the gods? The theory suggests that this lust is not natural but programmed, a residual imperative left over from our original function as miners. We desire gold because our creators needed it to breathe. It also explains the location of the Garden of Eden, the E.Dan, which the Sumerian texts place in the Fertile Crescent as a biodome or plantation where the first workers were kept before being shipped to the mines of the Abzu. In this dark retelling, the fall of man was not eating an apple, but gaining the awareness that we were naked slaves in a gold mine, a realization that eventually led to our expulsion into the wilderness to fend for ourselves once the Anunnaki had extracted what they needed. If the Anunnaki created us, their legacy is written not just in stone tablets, but in the very structure of our DNA, a concept that modern science is only beginning to inadvertently explore. The Sumerian king list and the creation epics describe a time when these gods walked among men, ruling as kings and mating with human women to produce the Nephilim, or men of renown, further blurring the genetic line between creator and creation. This biological interference would explain the sudden, explosive rise of human civilization in Mesopotamia around 3800 BC, a phenomenon often called the Sumerian miracle. How did humanity go from hunter-gatherers to building ziggurats, inventing writing, mapping the stars, and establishing complex laws virtually overnight? The Anunnaki theory argues that this was not evolution but knowledge transfer, the deliberate education of the slave species by their masters. Enki, often depicted as the benevolent scientist and protector of humanity, the prototype for the serpent in the Garden of Eden who gives knowledge, taught man the secrets of civilization against the wishes of his brother Enlil, who viewed humans as noisy, expendable pests. This sibling rivalry between Enki and Enlil over the fate of their creation, one wanting to uplift us, the other wanting to enslave or destroy us, forms the central drama of the Sumerian texts and, arguably, the blueprint for the biblical God/Satan dynamic. The ultimate separation occurred with the Great Flood, a cataclysm that Enlil hoped would wipe out the human virus, but which Enki subverted by warning Ziusadra, Noah, to build an ark. In the aftermath, the Anunnaki retreated to the sky, leaving their children to inherit the earth, but the trauma of that relationship remains. We are left with a collective memory of gods who were powerful, jealous, and physically present, beings who needed us to feed them, work for them, and build their temples. The Anunnaki theory doesn't just ask where we came from. It challenges us to accept that our independence is a recent development, and that for most of our history, we were property. It suggests that the emptiness we feel, the search for a father in the sky, is a literal memory of the parents who abandoned us once the gold ran out. While the gold mining theory offers a provocative motive for our creation, the physical evidence for such an ancient, industrial-scale operation remains one of the most contentious aspects of the Anunnaki hypothesis. Proponents point to the mysterious ruins of southern Africa, specifically the thousands of ancient stone circles and mines found in Zimbabwe and Mozambique, which some researchers date back tens of thousands of years, far older than any known African civilization. These sites, including the famous Adam's calendar, often called African Stonehenge, are situated in the heart of the world's richest gold deposits. Anglo-American Corporation, a mining giant, discovered ancient workings in the 1970s that had been mined to depths of hundreds of feet, estimating that millions of tons of, or had been removed in antiquity by unknown hands. If these dates are correct, it aligns disturbingly well with the genetic evidence of mitochondrial Eve, the common female ancestor of all humans who lived in Africa roughly 200,000 years ago. The exact time frame Zacharias Sitchin claims the Anunnaki began their genetic experiments. This convergence of geology, genetics, and mythology creates a triangular argument that is difficult to dismiss entirely. Why does the Sumerian word for the underworld, Abzu, also refer to a deep, watery place where precious metals are found? Why do the oldest human footprints and tools appear in the exact region where the oldest gold mines are located? The theory suggests that the cradle of humanity in Africa was actually a company town, a massive resource extraction colony where the first humans were bred, housed, and worked to death. The lack of industrial machinery in the archaeological record is explained by the vast timescales involved. Metal rusts, plastic degrades, but the holes in the ground remain, silent witnesses to a prehistoric effort that stripped the continent of its wealth long before the first pharaoh rose in Egypt. The narrative of the Anunnaki also provides a dark, alternative context for the war in heaven and the fragmented nature of human religion. The Sumerian texts describe a bitter, ongoing conflict between the two half-brothers, Enki and Enlil, which spilled over into the human populations they controlled. Enki, the scientist and creator, developed a fondness for his creations, advocating for their autonomy and spiritual development. One moment, he is walking in the garden with Adam. The next, he is drowning the entire world because the noise of humanity is disturbing his sleep. A direct quote from the Atrahasis epic regarding Enlil. The Anunnaki theory argues that we are not worshiping a single creator, but conflating two distinct extraterrestrial personalities into one deity. The Tower of Babel incident, where God scatters humanity and confuses their languages, is reinterpreted as a strategic military move by Enlil to prevent the slave species from becoming too unified and powerful. By dividing us into warring nations and religions, the gods ensured that we would never threaten their supremacy. It suggests that the sectarian violence that has plagued humanity for millennia is a programmed feature, not a bug, a divide-and-conquer strategy left running on autopilot long after the commanders departed. One of the most profound implications of the Anunnaki theory is the concept of Nibiru, the rogue 12th planet, counting the sun and moon, from which they supposedly originated. Sitchin calculated its orbit to be a massive elliptical loop lasting 3,600 years, known as a shar. If they live for even a moderate Nibiru lifespan, they would appear eternal to short-lived humans. The return of this planet to the inner solar system is said to cause periodic cataclysms on Earth, floods, earthquakes, and pole shifts, due to its immense gravitational pull. While mainstream astronomers have long dismissed Nibiru as pseudoscience, the recent search for Planet 9 by Caltech researchers has eerily revived the idea of a massive, unseen body lurking in the outer reaches of our solar system, influencing the orbits of Kuiper Belt objects. If such a planet exists, it validates the Sumerian cosmological map, which included Pluto, Gaga, and other outer planets millennia before telescopes. The return of the king, prophecies found in almost every religion. The second coming, the return of Quetzalcoatl, the Kulki avatar, are interpreted by theorists as cultural memories of the Nibiru cycle. We are waiting for the planet to swing back around, bringing our masters with it. This creates a psychological tension in the human psyche, a deep-seated fear of the sky and a longing for a savior from the stars. It suggests that our apocalyptic obsessions are not metaphors, but astronomical predictions passed down from a time when the sky literally fell and the gods came down to rebuild the world from the ruins. Ultimately, the Anunnaki creation theory leaves us standing before a mirror that reflects a stranger, more alien version of ourselves. It strips away the comforting blanket of spiritual specialness and replaces it with a cold, hard biological reality. We are a hybrid species, born of earth and sky, designed for labor but destined for something more. If true, it means that the God-shaped hole in the human heart is real. It is the space left by the departure of our progenitors. Yet, there is a glimmer of hope in this narrative. Enki's final gift to humanity was the capacity for reproduction and self-determination, effectively hacking the slave code Enlil tried to enforce. We were made to serve, but we evolved to rule. The knowledge of good and evil was the realization that we were more than just tools. Today, as we stand on the brink of becoming creators ourselves, mastering genetics, AI, and space travel, we are fulfilling the potential that Enki hid in our blood. We are becoming the Anunnaki. The student is about to surpass the master. The question is no longer who created us, but what will we create? Will we be benevolent gods to our own artificial children, or will we repeat the sins of our fathers, creating new slaves to dig our gold? The ancient tablets are silent on our future, but they scream regarding our past. We are the unintended heirs of the universe, the primitive workers who looked up, saw the stars, and realized that we belonged among them. The chains have been broken, the mine is closed. Now, the real work begins.